So my wife says to me, "Hey, we're going to this function, and hey, you want to cook something?" And I said, "Yes, I do." But then I remembered, wait a minute, I'm fasting. And so it came to my mind that a lot of times we are in the middle of a fast. And as I say, life happens. And so, how do you cook a meal? How do you make sure it's tasty when you're fasting? I thought about breaking the fast, and I don't know. I'll let you kind of vote and let me know. Should I break the fast or should I keep doing what I'm doing and use some of these techniques we're going to talk about here tonight? Hey, I'm Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Wood with an E if you're new to me. That's the E stands for endocrinology. And here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your life, your health, avoid complications, and go to the next level. And in this year, new year, new you. I'm talking to adults with type 2 diabetes. How do we put your diabetes in remission? How do we reverse diabetes, get you off of some of those medications that you're on, and get you heading in the right direction, correcting a lot of those metabolic diseases that are associated with diabetes? If you're new to me, hey, come on, say hello. Let us know that you're there. We'd love to give you a hand clap and some music. One of the tools that we've been using in this quest for reversing diabetes is fasting. And as you know, on a weekly basis, I do a fast, a 72-hour fast, and I'm a little over 48 hours. Let's see, it's now 9 o'clock, so 48, so 51 hours into the fast now. We're going to end this fast tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about that because there are some new things, some different things going on with me. But that's what we do. And as you know, the way we do it here, you're going to take a look at my blood sugars. You'll see what my monitors are showing. There is my report off on the side. That's my Dexcom report. I've got my meters over here, and we'll take a look to see what my blood sugars are. And then, of course, we're going to check to see what my ketones are, because that's one of the big parts of the whole fasting process. But as we do, like we do what we do, I'm going to go ahead and do a check-in because I want you to know how I'm feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally, because those are the three things, the three areas that sometimes people will struggle with, right? And if we don't do a good job in that area, sometimes that can derail us and set us up for not being successfully able to complete this fast. And then, of course, that sets us up for a bad feeling or taste in our mouths for the next time we want to fast, because we say, oh, that didn't work, or I didn't feel good, and so we kind of leave it alone. But fasting is an amazing way of improving. Remember the three pillars. Number one, decreasing our insulin. Number two, decreasing our appetite. And number three, decreasing our blood sugar, right? So those are the three things that we do three of the things that we do when we fast. There is a lot more that happens. But so how am I feeling? So physically, I'm actually feeling very good. I know this fast, for some reason, and all the others, you remember one time several weeks ago, I was feeling a little tired and lightheaded. This time I am struggling with some allergies, and so I've been taking some allergy medication, and initially it made me a little groggy, but surprisingly, I'm feeling good. I mean, I'm 2 days in, 48 hours, actually 51 hours now, and am not feeling lightheaded, dizzy, sweaty, all the things that you would expect if you've not eaten for 2 days, right? We'll talk a little bit more about why that is. One of the reasons, as I mentioned last night in the fast, or in the check-in, that if we do a good job of preparing, getting into the fast, going into the fast, then the fast itself actually works out pretty well, because we're doing all the things we need to do in order to get ready for the fast. As I often say, there are three phases to the fast. There's the preparation for the fast, there's the fast itself, and there is the breaking of the fast. And you can, if you do a good job in each of those, then you have a successful fast. So physically, feeling good. Mentally, I feel clear. I don't feel groggy, as I said. Went through the day today, saw patients, interacted with my team and so forth. Although one person did say to me that on Thursday, sometimes I'm a little cranky. Right? So Thursday, as you know, that's my second day of fasting. but I'm not paying any attention to that. No, but feeling clear, and then emotionally, not a lot of things going on this week that were stressful. I do have one event coming up tomorrow that we're going to talk a little bit about, and then I do have a presentation that I'm doing coming up next week that's been on my mind, but because I've been preparing all along, not as much stress as I would expect. Okay, so physically feeling good, mentally I'm clear, and emotionally feeling I'm in a good space. So let's hop over and let's take a look at blood sugars, and you'll see there on the screen that is my Libre, and right now the Libre is saying that my glucose is 69. And you'll see down at the bottom of the graph, you'll see that for most of today, that blood sugar has been heading down. It started out below 100 and has been heading down. And then finally here near the end of the day, within the last few hours, it actually went below 70. So that red that you see at the bottom is 70. Let's see what my Dexcom says. My Dexcom says I'm 72, so not far off. And then, of course, as we always do, I've got my meters over here. I've got a contour meter, and then I also have a Keto Mojo. Now, I have another meter that I'm going to add into the rotation. I was just saying the rotation. I'm going to add it in a couple of times so that you can see a third meter. But I always do this because I want you to know what the various meters are saying. Oftentimes, people will get a little panicked or worried or not know that the meters themselves can be off. About 20% is what the standard says. So I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and check that and see what it is. So let's go ahead and grab a strip for the contour and get that in there. And then, of course, the Keto Mojo, as you know, does not just the glucose, but it also does the ketone. And let's go ahead. We're going to do the glucose first. And I'm going to use, so I've got two different lancets, right? So I'm going to go ahead and use this blue one because I like it simple. You just take it out and you get a poke in the finger. Make sure you get a deep enough one because you're going to need, and of course, let me see if I did that. Okay, I think I have enough blood. A drop of blood for this. The first one is usually not an issue. It's usually the second and third drop that we're gonna need. That sometimes is an issue. Okay, there we go. So 63 is what the Keto Mojo says. And while that's doing, I'm gonna keep milking because I need one more drop. And 69 is what the contour says. Let me go ahead and get that strip out because we're gonna go ahead and put the strip in for the ketones, and you can go ahead right now and start putting in what you think the ketones are going to be, because I'm going to start this running, and I know I always tease you guys. I'm not going to let you see what it is, right? Because I want you to guess, because right now I am over 50 hours of fasting, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about what that's going to be in a minute, and then we'll take a look at my reports. Okay. All right. So let's hop over and let's talk a little bit about, as I led into this, tips for fasting cooks. So I fancy myself a cook. I think I'm a good cook. I think I learned some things from my dad, who was an excellent cook. And there are a couple of dishes that he made, and I can make maybe one or two of those. There's a fourth one that my brothers and sisters and I have been trying to perfect, and I'm still working on that. We may come back and do a show. If you remember, several months ago, actually, I did a show where I talked and I did a cooking episode, and I cooked curry. So curry is that's the thing I love to cook. Like, I can cook curry right now. As a matter of fact, I am planning to cook some curry for this weekend. And that's where this whole thing comes in, right? Because my wife says to me, hey, do you want to make some curry chicken for this thing that we're going to? And I said, sure. And then, she went out, she got the chicken, and we got all the supplies. And she said, "Hey, are you going to cook it tonight?" And then I thought, wait a minute, I'm fasting, right? So I can cook it tomorrow and get ready for the weekend. It's actually, the thing is going to be on Saturday, so I can cook it tomorrow night in preparation for Saturday. But then I started thinking, well, what do you do if you are in a situation where you want to cook or you need to cook, you have to cook, right? Your mom, dad, brother, sister, son, daughter, grandparent, and the people around you are not fasting. You are fasting. What do you do in that situation? And this is not to make a decision in terms of the social part of it, right? That's a whole nother conversation that we've had some before, and we may come back and do again. But this is simply the part of making sure that the food tastes good, because a part of what we do as we cook is we taste. And so what do you do? What are some tips for making sure that the food tastes good when you are not able to taste it? And so that's what we want to talk a little bit about tonight. And so number one, right? So this is the idea. This is the challenge. The challenge is that you're cooking, right? You're cooking. You're the one who's in charge. And, normally you taste everything to make sure that it's going to be enjoyable, that everybody can taste it, that it is good. But here you are, you're not able to taste it. Or here's another situation, right? Maybe you have some dietary restrictions and the people that you are cooking for don't have those restrictions, and you are going to cook this meal for them. So what do we do? And so some simple things that you can try, right? Some simple things that you can try. Number one, you can follow a trusted recipe, right? Trusted recipe. So you can start with recipes that have been validated, well received, or they come from a reputable place. If you are not doing a recipe of your own, right? You are going to try something new. Get it, make sure that it's from a valid place and that it's been documented, it's been vetted, so that you can minimize the risk that the flavors will be imbalanced, right? Because sometimes, you get a recipe, and have you ever been in a situation where you got a recipe and you make the recipe exactly like they said in the recipe, and it really doesn't come out that well, or come out like they said it's supposed to? Okay, so you want to validate, make sure you're getting recipes from good sources. And then, the last point that we're going to make is going to be an important one. But if you are cooking something from your family, make sure that you have gone through and you've validated all the ingredients. Right. So a lot of times in our families and even for ourselves, we kind of do from the hips, right? We just kind of put a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, which is great if you're able to taste it. But if you're not able to taste it, then of course that does not work quite that well. All right. So that's number one, right? So follow trusted recipes. Number two, use aromatherapy, right? The aromatic cues. A significant part of taste comes from smell, right? So pay attention to the aromas that you're smelling, right? They can often indicate how the flavors are coming together. Are they melding together? Are they mixing like you expect? For example, when you smell garlic or onions, right? When they're sauteing, pretty much when those onions or the garlic are at the point where they have been sauteed enough. Right, so begin using your nose, begin using those senses, because when you put things, particularly if you're doing the layering, this whole idea of layering, where you don't just throw everything in the pot one time, right? You put one thing and you kind of saute that, and then you put something else and let that simmer. You cover it down so they can meld together, and then you open it up, you add something, right? So all that idea, the point of doing the layering is that you are building those flavors, right? You're building the complexity of those flavors. But the same thing can happen as we are using the aromas of the things that are coming together. Because when I'm making curry, I can pretty much tell you by smell, right? If that curry, when you're initially burning, if you will, or you're sauteing the curry and the garlic and the onions, I can pretty much tell you when that is ready for me to now add the meat, the chicken that's going in there. And then at some point, you've kind of sauteed it. You got the meat, and the meat is browning, and the meat's mixing up, and you get that flavor that wafts out of the pot. And you could tell, okay, that's now ready for me to do something else to the pot, right? So use those flavors, use those aromas, if you will, to kind of get you in the direction where you want to be in terms of taste. The next thing is to use techniques that are consistent and that give consistent results, right? So when we saute, when we fry, when we are cooking and those types of things, the chances of being off is much higher because you've got to pay attention to a lot of other things. But if you've mixed it from a recipe that's valid, if you mixed, for instance, you're cooking some meat or tofu or even beans, right? And you are baking those, you put it in the pan, you've covered it down, you put it in the oven, or you put it on the grill. That's another one. All those techniques are pretty consistent, right? And you tend to get a better result, a more consistent result than if you're sauteing or frying. So if you're doing something during the time when you are fasting, try to make a dish where baking, roasting, grilling, that's the method, that's the technique you're going to use, because you're likely to get a more consistent dish that is flavorful and that is in keeping with what you expect it to taste like. Okay. Next thing is, if there are people around you that are not fasting, ask them to taste what it is you're making, right? Unless they have some dietary restrictions as well. But if they're around you, say to them, "Hey, do you mind tasting this?" Particularly if you're doing cooking, if you're preparing in a more lengthy, prolonged process, then you may need other people to kind of taste and help guide you, right? Because it's easy to have them taste and say, "Okay, I think you need a little bit more salt. I think you need a little bit more garlic. Oh, this is a little too sweet. This is a little too whatever," right? So get their opinion, because, and as a matter of fact, they may be the ones that are going to be helping you eat the food anyway when you're serving this, when you're broken the fast and you're moving on. Okay, so get their opinion. Much simpler to do that than to struggle along. And then y'all develop a strong understanding of how different flavors go together. Now this, right, has to do with just learning to cook. Right? Basically, that's what that's saying. There are certain flavors that go together, right? Garlic, right, mixes with a lot of different things. Garlic and lemon, right? That's an example of putting something together that you already know that it's going to taste good. But so begin learning what different flavors taste like together, what different things taste like together. One of the things that we begin learning is when we're going to restaurants, right? So you'll taste a dish at the restaurant and you mean, "Man, this is like the best thing that I've ever had." And then you'll go home and you'll try to make it. And you'll follow the recipe, supposedly, like it is, but it doesn't quite taste the same. Why? Because the people who are cooking it, the chef, those that are in the restaurants, those people who cook it well, they've learned different subtleties of combining different flavors and different spices. And so this just has to do with learning the cooking process. What flavors go together? What flavors complement each other, right? So there are certain flavors. Like a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I don't like anything that's bitter." But do you know that greens are bitter, right? They have kind of that bitter taste to them. And so kind of mixing that with maybe something that's acidic is good. Right? That's why hot sauce goes well with greens. That's why sometimes people will put a little bit of, and we're talking about diabetes, yes, but put a little bit of brown sugar in there, right? So because those flavors complement each other. So begin learning how these flavors can be combined so that in your cooking process, when you are not able to taste, you have an idea of how it's going how it should taste. And then you're using that flavor, or the aroma that's coming off of it, using a recipe perhaps that you've put together or that you've gotten from a good, reputable source. And yeah, so the chances of getting the flavor that you want or the taste that you want goes up significantly in that case. And then, y'all, guess what? Some things come simply by practicing. That's right. Make that dish over and over and over and over and over. You know, that's part of the cooking process anyway. Okay? So practice. Frequent preparations. Go in the kitchen. Make it. Like I make curry well, I shouldn't say all the time, but I make it quite a bit. So if somebody says to me, hey, can you cook something and bring it over? The first thing I'm thinking is, okay, I'm going to make some curry chicken. Okay. And so I make that over and over and over. And of course, you know, one of the things I've got to perfect is sometimes I make it a little too spicy. So I made some recently, and if you're out there and it was too spicy, I apologize. Right, but that's the spiciness in me, and sometimes that sneaks out. But the more you practice, the better it gets. The more you practice, the more you're able to make those dishes that taste good. So how do you make something that is tasty while you are fasting? Right, that's it right there. Right, you got to make sure that you are following some simple things. Right, some simple practices, which are not difficult, but it does take some forethought. It takes some you kind of sitting down and deciding what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. And if you follow those simple principles, then I think you are setting yourself up for success. So number one, follow, trusted recipes. Number two, rely on aromatic cues. Use consistent cooking techniques. Get feedback from people that are around you. And then, guess what? Understand those flavors. And then just practice, 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 practice. Did I say practice? And more practice. Right. And if you do that, you're setting yourself up for success. All right. Well, let's hop over and let's take a look at what my glucose reports were saying. And let's see. So here is my Dexcom that you see there on the screen. And let's hop through and make some points. So number one, my average blood sugar is 109, right? So this thing says for the last 14 days, that's what my average blood sugar has been. And as I always want to do, let's pop that over and let's make it 90 days so we can see what the last 3 months, what my blood sugar has been. My average blood sugar is 114 for the last 3 months. My time in range, 96%. And I usually tell people, 79 is where I want you to be, but 96 is actually excellent. This thing says, okay, so the range is 70 to 180. And if I were to keep this up, this range, this average blood sugar, according to the monitor, my glucose management indicator is 6.0. So that's what my estimated A1C would be, right around 6.0. So let's take a look at one of the daily graphs. And I want to do this because I want to see what our blood sugar has been over the last several days as I fasted. As you know, we started fasting right here on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And the blood sugar right then was 121, right at 6 o'clock. At 24 hours, that's Wednesday now at 6 o'clock, we're 94. At 48 hours, we're 79. And I would anticipate tomorrow at 72 hours, we'd be in the 60s. Because if you remember, my Libre says that my blood sugar is 69. And my Dexcom right now says that my blood sugar is 74. Okay. And so we expect that. So what do you think, guys? If you remember, I asked you if you think you know what my ketones are going to be. Go ahead and drop that into the chat. What are my ketones? What do you think it is? Right. So I've been fasting for over 54 hours. 51 hours. Or 51 hours. So remember, ketones If my ketones are below 0.5, that's considered normal. 0.5 to about 1.5 is considered nutritional ketosis. And then above 1.5 is considered therapeutic ketosis. Right? So what do you think is going to be? Drop that in the comments. And while we do that, let's talk a little bit about the premise of all that we do here on the channel. Right? That's the triple E formula for success. We educate, we empower, and we encourage. We educate by the shows, the blogs, the podcasts, the handouts, the PDFs, the downloads, all those things that we do. That's the education. Because in order to make changes, in order to put this diabetes in remission, we've got to change our thought process. But thought process alone, getting information alone, does not work. Because you've got to have some empowerment, and the empowerment comes with the tools that we teach, the tools that we are learning. One is the fasting, the whole idea of fasting and what it does, how it works in the body. Number two, emotional intelligence, another one of the tools that we've learned. The 5 whys, why are we doing what we're doing? The HEAT model, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. All of those are tools to apply the things that you are learning. And the challenges that we do on a monthly basis are to help you to incorporate those things that we're learning in the process of making these changes. Okay? So educate, we empower, and then we encourage. And the encouragement comes from the community that we are building here on the channel, the meetups that we have. Had a great meetup last month. Keep an eye out for the one that's coming up in the month of May and join in on that, right? So that we can all encourage each other. We'll talk about encouragement in just a minute. And the HEAT model. The HEAT model is just a way of understanding the things that will drive us, that will push us in the direction of breaking a fast early, of getting off of our meal plan, of not following through with the things that we say that we're going to be doing to manage our diabetes and to get better. Right? So HEAT model. So these are the things, these are the triggers that push us in the direction of eating. Number one, our habits, emotions, access, and taste. Habits, sometimes we eat simply because it's eating time. We're not hungry. Maybe we may have just eaten something just a little while ago. Right? We eat because it's 12 o'clock. It's afternoon. We eat because we see people around us eating. We eat because, hey, we're going to watch a movie, so I'll have some popcorn. Okay? We eat simply because of habit. We eat also because of emotions. Our emotions will drive us in the direction of eating. So if you're angry, lonely, tired, bored, frustrated, right, sad, depressed, all of those things, all of those emotions drive us to eat. So the food soothes us, it calms us, it puts us in a space where we feel like, oh my goodness, yeah, I've got to have that chocolate, I've got to have that ice cream, I've got to have that cookie or that donut. I've never seen people say, hey, I got to have some broccoli, right? Like people, like nobody is ever triggered to eat broccoli, but it's always those high carb things, right? So once again, so the habits, emotions, access. Sometimes we eat simply because the thing is there. You walk by somebody's desk at work and the bowl of candy is right there. You walk into the pantry or walk by the kitchen or walk by the dining room and there's something on the table and you grab one, not because you're hungry, but just because it's there. And then we eat, y'all, because of taste. And taste is a very interesting one because taste encompasses some of the others, right? Because the taste reminds us of that emotion that we felt when we had that thing before, right? For me, I've told you the story. I love pizza. I love pizza. I love Chinese food. I love hot dogs. I grew up in Brooklyn, grew up in New York, and I couldn't figure out why it was that those things were always pulling at me. It didn't matter where I was, right? Like if I landed in New York right now, I'd have a struggle. And I began thinking and processing, and it was because those are the things I ate with my dad. And he's no longer with us, but when I eat them, it reminds me, y'all, it reminds me of that connection. And so a lot of times, it's not the food that we're chasing. We're chasing the thing that the food gave us. We're chasing the emotion. We're chasing the environment or that feeling that we got from the food. So the things that push us, the HEAT model, habits, emotions, access, and taste. And then our call to action here on the channel. Number one, join the challenges, right? Don't just let this be something that you listen to, that you hear, that you put on the shelf. As you're listening to the shows, as you're coming along with us, as you're coming into the check-ins, right? Go along and start doing the challenges. The challenge for this month, if you remember, and we just got a few more days, was to create a meal, create a dish, right? That has all of these parameters, that fulfills these parameters. Number one, whole foods, right? As close as possible to its natural form. Number two, minimize processing food. No sugar added, no added sugar in that meal. Something that has starchy and non-starchy foods, vegetables, healthy fats and lean protein. Something that's tasty, because if it's not tasty, y'all, we're not doing it. And then appropriate portion size, because a lot of times we eat portions that are way too big. It's not that we're eating the wrong thing, but we're just eating too much of that, right? So number one, join the challenges. Number two, when you're here, right, say hello. Like Steve, hey Steve, how you doing? Steve is saying hello to us right now. Steve hopped on. Come on, claim your seat. When you share your story, the people that are listening, people who are watching, they are encouraged when they see your successes. Yeah, because we know, hey, if Steve can do it, if John can do it, if Jennifer can do it, if everyone else can do it, then I can do it as well. And when we see the places that you're having some difficulty, some challenges, it encourages us because we know we're not alone. And we can now come together and we can build the community together and we can help each other on the road to success. And then, y'all, there are over 1 billion people on the planet right now that are living with type 2 diabetes and or pre-diabetes. Over 1 billion. You can be the voice of change. You can be the person that changes your environment, that changes your family dynamic, right? A lot of us have people in our family that, everywhere you turn, there's a diabetic. Everywhere you turn, somebody has heart disease, have had a heart attack, has had a stroke, has high blood pressure, high cholesterol. All those things can improve. And this is a great place to say that even if you're not diabetic, just don't think that the things that we're talking about does not help you, because the things that we talk about help people who have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, polycystic ovarian syndrome, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, obesity or struggle with weight, people who have metabolic syndrome. So all those and more get better by following the basic principles of the things that we're discussing. So just because you're not diabetic, don't say, oh, that's just for the diabetics. No, this is for everybody, right? All those billion people, over a billion people that are on the planet that have prediabetes or diabetes, yes, it helps them as well. So remember to do that. So make sure that you are coming on the show. Make sure that you are doing the challenges, and then make sure that you are inviting somebody to be in this space with us and to work along with us, because they can get better. They will be able to succeed getting off of some of that medication. All right. So I've kept you long enough because you've been wondering, y'all, what were his ketones, right? So let's hop over and let's take a look at that. Let's see. I think I have to do it this way. So let's go ahead. We're going to get this monitor off. I've got to turn this one back on so that it syncs. All right, and you should see it start syncing here in just a minute. All right, here we go. Okay, there is syncing. Oops, this is error. Okay, syncing in progress. And it's pulling that data over from the monitor. It's a little slower than I expected, but that's okay. I think that's because it gave that error just a minute ago. All right, so maybe I'll stop it in. Okay. It's going 40, 50. Come on now. And we should have that number here just a second. But what do you think? Anybody? 0.5 and up. Okay, so there we go. And it said it synced. And it synced a lot of stuff. Okay. So there it is. Okay, so my glucose, if you remember, was 63, right? That's what the meter said. And so my ketones are 2.3. Remember, ketones that are below zero point 0.5 are considered normal. 0.5 to 1.5, nutritional ketosis, and above 1.5 is considered therapeutic ketosis. Let's take a look at the graph. And so looking at this graph, the turquoise line that you see is those are the ketones. The tan line, those are blood sugars. And so when I ended my fast last week, you see the turquoise line is high, so my ketones were high, my blood sugar was low. And then as I started eating over the course of the next several days, I ended the fast on Friday, then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesday, those blood sugars rose, and my blood sugar at that point got to, 126? Ketones were down at 0.2, so no longer in ketosis. And then as I started the fast and started eating, right, notice that the blood sugars are going down and the ketones are rising. And at some point there, I guess that was maybe earlier today, they crossed. Well, let's back up and let's take a look. So yesterday, if you remember, ketones were, or this morning when I did my show, remember I did a late show this morning, ketones were 0.8 and glucose was 86. And then this afternoon, when I checked it before coming home at the office, my ketones were 1.5 and glucose at that point was 71. And then look at that, y'all. From 6:30 to right now, right, what time is it? 10:40, or 9. Yeah. My ketones rose from 1.5 to 2.3, and then blood sugars went from 71 down to 63. So this is a great place to talk about this, right? So what is going on? So remember, the body is kind of like one of those hybrid cars, right? So the hybrid car burns gas and it burns electricity from the battery. The body is the same way. It can burn carbs, glycogen, glucose, and it can also burn fat and use ketones. And so at about, after our digestive process is going on, 6 to 12 hours, the body's digesting the food. Right about 16 hours going into 18 hours, the body is using up now all of the glycogen, all of the glucose that's there. In about 24, 26 hours, the glycogen store in your liver is actually pretty much depleted. And so the body now is beginning to look for something else to use to keep the system going. And that usually starts actually about 18 hours. So as the glucose is going away, glycogen is being used up, the body is now looking for another source. And the thing that it finds are those fat cells. When it burns the fat cells, right, it's converting that to ketones and it's using ketones as energy. So we've switched like the hybrid car from burning glucose to now burning ketones. It is then, y'all, during that process, when we are using the fat cells, that we're getting a lot of those other benefits that we see, the weight loss, right? That mental clarity that people talk about while they're fasting. All of those things happen in the fast. Now, if you're doing intermittent fasting, and I've said this before, that doesn't mean that you don't get those benefits. It may be a little slower, but don't let anyone convince you that you have to do an extended fast to get those benefits. Now, an extended fast, as we talked about last week, how long should you fast? It gives additional benefits and it jumpstarts the process. But fasting itself is beneficial. If you have significant disease, you may want to do a longer fast, a more extended fast. And if you've not watched that show yet, last Friday, I believe, when we broke the fast, we talked about how long should we fast, right? And it depends on what your goals are. But an amazing process, amazing fasting. Now, tomorrow is our 72-hour at 6 o'clock. I'm going to be helping to produce a show at 6:30. So I think I may come a little early, and you won't see me breaking the fast at 6 o'clock because I'll have to leave. But I think that's what I'll do. Either that or we'll come later and break the fast at a later period. Right. So if you think you'd prefer me to end the fast early or prolong the fast so we can see how much longer we can go. Drop me a comment in the chat right now, or send me a message, Dwain Woode, D Woode at DwainWoodeMD.com, or on any of our social media platforms. You can find me there on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, obviously, here on the YouTube channel. Any of those places you can reach out, or Instagram, you can reach out to me and let me know. Hey, y'all, always, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for all of those who came through and hung out with us. Steve, thank you for coming through here on YouTube. Let me just pop that up. So Steve was saying hello. As always, y'all, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Woode with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your healthier life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. And in this year, y'all, new year, new you. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.